Hey everybody, welcome back to the Queens Lair. I am your host and we are in the month of June. My name is Kellie Miles. I forgot to say that part, so I had to add it in. But we are in the month of June and it's Father's Day. It's the month that Father's Day falls in. So what better topic to talk about other than fatherhood, right? So we're going to talk about fatherhood. And today we have with us, that's going to be joining us, is Bishop John Wesley Edmondson. So let's bring Bishop Edmondson on. And I'm just going to share with you a little bit about Bishop John. Bishop John, first of all, he's my father, my spiritual father. And with him, he's also the leader of Victory in Christ Christian Center, which is in Westville, New Jersey. And he's also shared the leadership with Pastor Aisha Edmondson, who is his Victoria's Secrets model and his wife and my spiritual mother. So welcome to the show, Bishop.
Hey, how are you? I'm so excited. I always say this, to be looking at greatness, number one. So my day is made. I'm looking at greatness. You know, talking about my Victoria's Secret model. I'm happy. I'm good. I'm excited to be here with you.
Well, praise God. Praise God. I am so excited to have you. And so I guess we can go ahead and start. Fatherhood is a great topic for you, right? Because it's something that you're passionate about. You even wrote a book called Fatherhood, The Missing Link. So tell us a little bit about your passion for fatherhood.
You know, it's something that's very close to my heart because I grew up without a father, and men struggle. The average man has not had a father. Many men have not had a father in the home, and we struggle when fatherhood is not there. And one of the things you realize, fatherhood is the foundation of everything. When God brought forth humanity, he brought forth the male man first, not to be better than, but as the foundation. He was going to build everything on top. So I have such a passion for fatherhood and for men, for them to know who they are, because it changes everything about them. And I think that's why in our church, there's more men in our church than sometimes there's people in other churches.
Oh, wow.
Because we create this climate for men. So I have this heart for men, knowing who they are, stepping into their role, covering their families, and it exudes into other men who see this model, and they step up and become that.
Yeah, and I think that it's a thing that it's almost like lost in your book. You have a chapter called Defining Fatherhood. And so I think it gets lost because, like you said, they don't know who they are. And they don't know what that responsibility is as a father, because unfortunately, there's been a history and a pattern of that missing link. And since that missing link is there, it causes a deficit to be present. So, talk about how you define fatherhood. How would you define it? Because maybe people just don't know.
Yeah. And so I'll take it back to, I grew up without a dad. And so I can see now how everything was off, because fatherhood in the book, we define the Hebrew word for father is papi, and it means source. It means source and sustainer and upholder of everything around it. And so to understand fatherhood means you understand that everything flows from you. Doesn't make you better than anybody. It makes your mindset knowing that everything is standing on top of me. When God brought forth Adam and Eve, he brings Adam forth, establishes him, then he brings forth Eve, because what God knew is, I'm about to build all of humanity on top of the foundation. And I think you know this, Kellie, because you're awesome, you're so versed in so many things. When you buy a house, the windows can be new, the roof can be new, everything can be new. But when they inspect that house, if the foundation is cracked, they'll tell you the house really, we need to tear everything down and fix the foundation. And so fatherhood is about defining it, it's about understanding as men, we're the foundation. Everything is built upon us. And many times, and guys don't want to hear this, but it's true, many times the problems in families, if we get the man right, we get everything else right. And I tell guys, focus on you, how you can be better, where you need to change. Because when you do that, a lot of the problems in your family with your spouse begins to subside. So that definition of fatherhood really centers on being source, sustainer, provider, upholder. Everything is built on top of me. And if I can get a guy to understand that and assume that responsibility, it's amazing how his life and his family shifts.
Yeah, and it's amazing because, you know, just talking about that foundation, there's so many men, unfortunately, who do have a cracked foundation, which causes it to be unstable.
Right.
And on this line, talking about that, I want to talk a little bit about stepfathers, because I think that there's a missing link even with that, because there's a disconnection with the child because it's not their blood child. And so there's sometimes a lack of compassion, lack of understanding. And I think that there's some information that maybe you can share to help with those men who are dealing with being a stepfather and how they can take that responsibility and that role and still be the foundation for that child to help that child build, especially when you're talking about men who are raising stepchildren that are boys.
Right, right. That's an awesome question. You know, fatherhood, which, like we said with motherhood, I know we're in a fatherhood teaching. You know, fatherhood and motherhood are not about children. It's not about children. It's not about birthing children. You can have children and not be a father. You know, motherhood is about birthing vision. Fatherhood is about sustaining everything. So you can have 5 kids. Just because you have blood children doesn't make you a father, which is why stepdads are so cool. Stepdads are so awesome because unlike a biological father, a biological father, you have no choice what comes out of your wife. Girl, boy, you don't have a choice. A stepdad chooses to become a father. They choose to take on those kids. And because fatherhood is not about biological kids. Father, you know, I always say guys that have kids, you know, you have kids, that doesn't make you a dad. You are a sperm donor. That's what you were. That doesn't mean you're a father. Because I don't know if I should have said that. I'm sorry. I should have said that.
No, but it's real, right? We
Yes.
need the real, right?
Yes. You know, dogs do that.
Right.
Fathers come in and take responsibility for those children. They turn around and their mindset is, I'm here to help you become all that you're called to be. So a stepdad is at a whole nother place of coming in and taking care of those kids that he didn't birth, but he looks at them as, I take responsibility for them. That's a powerful word tied to fatherhood. It's, I choose to take responsibility for them and care for them, no different than if they came out of me. Now, the dynamics are a little different because, like with me, my biological dad left when I was 2. He was gone. He was out. My stepdad came in and wasn't good because he didn't understand fatherhood. He came in and changed my name. My name was John Jeffrey Worthington. He changed my name to John Wesley Edmondson Jr. after him. He was there for 10 years and then he left. And I was very angry because he was abusive. He was physically abusive. He was emotionally abusive and told me he wasn't my real father out of anger. And then when I told him I knew, he proceeded to backslap me. And so I was very angry. I was an angry young man because I'm like, what's wrong with me? How come my natural dad didn't want me? My stepdad didn't want me. And I was very angry. And so stepdads have to come in and understand, you can't come in with guns blazing. Do this, do that, do this. The mentality has to be, you may be dealing with an angry child, in particular men, because there's this perpetuation of anger in men because the father wasn't there. And we begin to look at what's wrong with us versus what was wrong with the person that left. And so a stepdad has to understand that that word stepdad isn't secondary. That means God used you to step in to a role that should have never been void in the first place. That's really good. You are a void filler. And you come in to cover those children, cover that family, take responsibility for them, to help them rise up and become what they're called to be. And I might need to be more compassionate. And I find with grown men in our church, you hear me all the time. I've said it to your husband. I go, hey, man, I love you. And if a guy doesn't say it back, I go, hey, I need to hear some love, man. Because guys many times aren't taught that. And it's something about a young boy that has fatherhood in his life. It changes his whole mindset.
And I think that's amazing because, you know, having a man to be this responsibility, for this young man, and not necessarily because you birthed a child or you had a child. Now, how do you deal with a situation? And I'm a little bit off from my question here, but my question base that I have, but when you have a father who has taken the responsibility of a child, and then after you've taken that responsibility and you and your wife have your own child, how do you have the balance of making sure that you're fair and you're maintaining that responsibility with both, even if you have your own and a stepchild, so that there isn't a feeling of, you know, differentiation or isolation, or that child doesn't feel like, oh, now I'm not a part, or they start to behave, you know, inappropriately?
Yeah, I get that. And I think, you know, I know when I have three, I'll call them boys, but they're grown. And I even struggled with, from a different perspective, when I was all into Joshua, you know, it's our first and I love him. And then our second son comes, a Christian. I now had to spend time with him. And I remember being with him at night while my wife is with our oldest, and I'm crying because I don't want our oldest to feel second, left out, or whatever the case is. I think that mindset of biological kids versus non-biological kids, when a man understands fatherhood, it changes him, because you're not looking at biological. You're very much aware of it, but you're not looking at those children as these are my kids versus her kids or my stepchildren. You don't look at it that way. You look at it as these are my children. And so a guy that is adjusted his thinking is looking at it differently. So I'll bring it back to me. In our church, you know, everybody in our church are spiritual sons and daughters. You're my daughter. And I look at you as a daughter. I didn't birth you, unless somebody didn't tell me, which I don't think that's the case. I didn't birth you, you know, but I look at the men and women in our church. They are sons and daughters, no different than our natural children. I'm aware they're not, but it's a mindset. Fatherhood is a mindset, and a guy that understands fatherhood is looking at those children, looking at those boys, those young ladies, as this is my responsibility, and it's a privilege to raise them. And so guys that don't understand that struggle with, this is my children versus their, and it's off balance, because God never intended for you to look at your children mainly from a biological perspective. He intended for men, and I can say the same thing with women as motherhood, but for men to look at children as responsibility, which is why when kids come into the house, your friends' kids come into the house, they should feel a sense of stability. They, you know, a lot of our sons' kids, they would call us dad and mom, you know, because of our mindset, because we would look at them as their extended sons and daughters, and we would treat them that way, from go in the fridge and get what you want, or taking them on vacation with us, or whatever the case is. So I think a guy who struggles with that, it's really a reinforcement. He doesn't know who he is because he's looking at it from a natural versus a spiritual.
Yeah, and that's really good. And you know, we're going to get ready to take a short break, but before we do, you know, you're talking about how your stepfather left after 10, and then talking about the difference that some men treat their biological child as opposed to their stepchild, and how that should not be, because fatherhood is not based on biology, but it's based on responsibility. But when you have men who do that, how do you deal with, in the same chapter that we talked about, where it talks about defining fatherhood, you also, in that chapter, you say, you talk about many men who walk around with unforgiveness in their hearts because their dad walked away, in addition to possibly treating them a certain way, whereas they feel abandoned even with the father there. So when we come back right after this break, we're going to get into talking a little bit about the unforgiveness that men walk around with that spill over into our little boys. So right after this break. Hi, my name is Kellie Miles, and I am the founder and president of Virtuous Woman Queens Lair Foundation.
VWQL.
And our LISO program, which stands for
Living Episto, sharing our experiences.
It is an artistic movement where we take the arts to the street, visiting underserved members of our community, like those in homeless shelters, engaging them in artistic expression, giving them God's word, using real life scenarios to help them have the tools that they need to deal with personal struggles. If you would like to find out more information or to support our cause, visit our website at www.vwqueenslair.org or check out our Facebook page at VWQL Foundation. You can also send us an email at admin@vwqlfoundation.org. I guess that's easy, right? Thank you so much in advance for your support. All right. Thank you so much. We are back from the break. You are watching the Queens Lair with host Kellie Miles, and we have our guest today. Our guest of honor is Bishop John Edmondson of Victory in Christ Christian Center in Westville, New Jersey. Before we went on break, we were talking a little bit about unforgiveness and how some men have walked away from their family and they have children and boys and girls who are impacted by that, in addition to those who have stepfathers who are in the picture, who treat them a little differently, causing unforgiveness. And we're going to talk a little bit about that unforgiveness. And so in your chapter, like we mentioned, Bishop, you have a chapter called Defining Fatherhood. And in that chapter, you have something, a statement that talks about many men who walk around with unforgiveness in their hearts. Why do fathers walk away? I mean, why do fathers walk away, and how do men acknowledge unforgiveness and work through it, especially with the presence of the ego, the pride issues that sometimes kicks in?
Yes, great question. And so unforgiveness, dealing with that foundationally, and so many men had it. I had serious unforgiveness in my heart towards not just one dad, but two. I'm angry. When I went off to college, if my stepdad happened to be around, I didn't want to come home. I was angry. And what you have to understand foundationally is unforgiveness hurts you. It doesn't hurt the person that you're mad at. It hurts you, because unforgiveness causes you to be stuck. You're stuck in the moment. If you ever talk to somebody that's been hurt, they talk like it happened yesterday, even though it happened 5 years ago, because it's an anchor. It stagnates you. And the only way to get out of it, people may not want to hear this, the only way to get out of it is you have to forgive. Forgiveness is a choice. Forgiveness and trust are two total different things, but forgiveness is a choice. When I forgive, I release you from what you did. I let you go and release you from what you did. And when you do that, it takes this weight off of you. And so I tell people all the time, you can forgive somebody that's gone. They're passed away. We tell people do this all the time. Take a chair, sit it down, put that person's picture right there, and tell them how you feel and say, I forgive you. I release you. And I promise you, you feel this weight lift off. And so I had to go to my stepdad and I had to tell him, and it was amazing. He gave me a chance to talk in that moment. And I had to tell him, you hurt me, so on and so forth, but I forgive you. I forgive you for what you did. And this weight came off of me to the point that down the line, before he passed away, I was able to lead him to the Lord. I was able to lead him to the Lord. A man that abused me, hurt me, but forgiveness sets you free. And so many guys are walking around with that unforgiveness in their heart and that anger. And what it does, when you don't resolve it, it perpetuates. And guys walk away because many times that was done to them. My father, that was done to him. My stepdad and biological dad, their dads weren't there. And so fathers walk away from them. And it's a generational cycle that repeats itself again and again. When you forgive your father, listen to me out there. If your dad left you, you're not trash, you're treasure. But that treasure gets stagnated because you don't forgive. And when you forgive and you release your father, and on top of that, you understand fatherhood, check this out. You turn around and you don't look at raising children as something I have to do. You look at it as I get to do this. Because all of us have issues. I don't know about y'all. All have issues. Yes. And for God to trust you with children that you birthed or that you stepped into their life says a lot about you. And I get to raise up purpose and destiny. And so you got to forgive. You got to release the one that hurt you. You make a choice to let them go. If not, they control you from the grave.
That is something. That is something right there. You know what? I know that, like I said, I'm off of my questions, but being a father, how do you deal with when you're doing all that you think you can for your child, whether it's your stepchild or biological? How do you deal with when your child hurts you and you feel like, I'm done with this? They keep doing it. There's no respect. There's no love. There's no appreciation. And I'm done with this. And I just want to be away. How do you deal with that as a father, maintaining your stance and that keeping that foundation, being firm, because you can't just keep letting people do what they want to do to you,
right?
But still be a father. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, you know, one of the things that I talk about in fatherhood is that as guys, we're also disciplinarians. We're coverers, but we're disciplinarians. And disciplining is not about doing that out of anger. Disciplining, really, when you study discipline, and even in the Bible, it's about propelling towards purpose. So when I'm disciplining, I'm doing it intentional to help mold and shape you towards your destiny and your purpose, which is why I should never discipline out of anger. But let's be honest, I've been there. I wrote a book on it. I've been there where you've done all you can do, and that child is still acting out. That child is ungrateful, unappreciative, you know, trying to jump bad, and all of those, you know, different things. One time, one of my boys said "what" to their mom, and I lost my what? What do you mean, what? You know who that is? That's mommy. No, that's daddy's woman. You know, but we still, it's about a commitment that there's tough love. You know, there's tough love because you can't allow that child to walk all over in the house and over the mom and the dad and do what they want. So there's tough love that I may discipline you, and it might get tough and hard because we might have to take some things away. We might have to turn around and really lock down some things and so forth. But my commitment to that child is still there. I'm still there for them. I'm never going to walk away from that child. Now, they may walk away from me, but I'm never going to stop trying to empower you. I will stop trying to enable you, but I won't stop trying to empower you. And so it's a fine balance because I may have to discipline you, but you got to look at your kids like God. We all make God mad. We all disappoint God, and he never gives up on us. He never stops loving us, but yet he will discipline us.
Yes. And that's really good. I love that. And so we're actually getting close to time where we have to get ready to close out. But I want to ask one last thing with this missing link that is in fatherhood that you write about in your book. Share with us how, you know, what tips that you can give to restore that missing link, to help to mend that, even though it might already be broken, and share that with some of the men out there for how we can restore that.
You're asking great questions. Great question. You know, really it boils down to, as men, we have to really know who we are. You can sit in a church for years and not know who you are. Every man needs to be connected to a father. They need to be connected to a father, a man that knows who they are. I tell guys, and I talk about it, you know, in one of the chapters, there are 10 men in every man. There's 10 of us in every man, and God intends for all 10 to operate on maximum cylinders. And so guys are broken. They're walking around. They don't know who they are. And you have to get connected to a person that understands fatherhood, understands about the roles and the responsibilities as men that we're called to be. Until you get connected to a man that knows fatherhood, you'll never know who you are. Because every young man, every man on this planet, even if they're a 4-year-old, is fatherhood in the making. And so it takes, I'm constantly telling the guys in our church who they are. We teach them that. And so fatherhood is never broken. It's just ignorantly not known. It's there. God put it there. It can't be broken, but it can be hindered and stagnated because you don't know who you are. Any man who knows who they are is a completely different man. So I encourage guys, get connected to a mentor, get connected to somebody who is a role model, Get connected to somebody who knows who they are. All of us have been called to be fathers, which means we all have a father in our life. The Bible talks about it. And I mentioned it in the book that you have many teachers, but not many fathers. God puts a father in all of our life. And many times it's not our biological dad, because the biological dad doesn't know. But once when a father knows, when a guy knows fatherhood, he begins to know who he is, which is why I have every guy in our church read that book. Read it, because you need to know who you are. When they know who they are, all of a sudden, watch this, Kelly, they begin to stop a generational curse. They begin to reverse it now. I didn't grow up with a dad, but my 3 sons, all they know is having a dad in the house. All they know is fatherhood, who taught them how to tie their shoes, taught them how to ride a bike, taught them how to swim, taught them how to drive a car, which was very scary. That's all they know. They don't know what it's like to not have dad around and not just be in the house, be father. So I tell guys, you need to know who you are so that you can stop a potential generational curse that's been in your family for decades. You be the one to rise up. You be the one to step into who you are, and you be the one to reverse the generational curse of your family can be all it was called to be.
That is amazing. So good. Can you please just share with us, if people want to stay connected with you, if they're interested in finding out more information about your ministry, your book, how can they get in contact with you?
They can just hang out with you, my daughter, because you're my daughter. But if you can go to our website, victoryinchrist.cc. You can check us out on Facebook. You can check us out on Instagram. You can check us out on YouTube. We're on all social media platforms. So you can find out more information about us, my Victoria's Secret model, the co-pastor of the church. And so all the different social media platforms are there, and they can check us out and find us that way.
Thank you so much, Bishop. Well, it was an honor having you on the show today. I thank you so much for joining us. And I am so grateful for the value that you have poured into not just the men, but even the women who are going to watch this show.
Amen. My pleasure, my honor. I'm so proud of you. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Bishop. All right. Thank you, everybody, so much for watching the show. I hope you all enjoyed the nuggets of knowledge that you guys got from Bishop John Edmondson today. Fathers and mothers, I hope that you take some good nuggets from that, and don't just hear it and listen to it, but apply it to your life. Make sure that you understand that how important fatherhood is, and it's not based on biology, but responsibility. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and make sure you stay tuned for our next episode, and look out for more episodes on our YouTube page on VW Queens Lair, the Virtuous Woman Queens Lair YouTube page. So stay tuned for the next episode. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching The Queen's Lair. Stay tuned for the next episode.